welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty foundational in personal growth, the whole idea of limiting beliefs. And we're going to, kind of flip it on its head. Usually you hear limiting belief and you think, okay, those are the bad ones, right? Like, I'm not good enough, or maybe money's hard to come by.
Exactly. That's the standard approach. Find the negative thought, the subconscious thing holding you back. And the advice is always, swap it out. Replace I'm not worthy with I am worthy.
Yeah, the classic swap and replace. But the material we're exploring today is from Limiting Beliefs, Why All Beliefs Limit You by the Awakening Collective. And it makes this really radical claim. It basically says swapping one idea for another, that's not real freedom.
That's the core of it. It's suggesting the problem isn't just the content, whether the belief is negative or positive. The limitation comes from the structure of belief itself. This non-dual perspective argues that any fixed idea, even a really uplifting one, it inherently limits the openness of life.
Okay, that sounds potentially huge and maybe a bit abstract. So our mission today is to make that really concrete. We want to unpack why belief structures narrow reality, look at the emotional cost, especially with those positive beliefs, which is surprising, and then explore, what's the alternative? How do you live without being boxed in by concepts?
Right. So let's start with the structure. The usual view is, like you said, limiting beliefs are these invisible fences. You think, I'm not creative, so you just don't try art. Simple cause and effect.
And we try to fix that by saying, okay, now believe I am creative, but this source says, hang on, that positive statement, it's still a box.
Exactly, because when you say I am creative or I am successful, you're drawing a line. You're defining yourself in one specific way. A belief isn't reality itself. It's just a thought about reality that you're holding on to as true. And non-duality sees reality as this vast whole thing, contains everything, all the opposites, all at once.
Okay, for listeners maybe new to non-duality, how is that view of belief different from how, say, psychology looks at it?
Well, psychology often sees beliefs as maybe tools, right, for motivation, interpretation. Non-duality sees belief more as the origin of separation. Think of it like a flowing river versus a photograph of the river. Life is the dynamic, always changing river. A belief is like that photo. It captures one tiny static moment and says, this is the whole river. Any thought starting I am or life is creates a definition, and that definition automatically pushes away its opposite.
Ah, okay. So if I'm really attached to life is good, I'm basically resisting the times when life feels, bad or tragic.
You're setting up an internal battle for the moment life doesn't fit your rule. And here we need to make a really crucial distinction. It's key for this whole conversation. It's the difference between functional beliefs and defining beliefs.
Okay, yeah, that sounds important. Because otherwise it sounds like we're saying don't believe the stove is hot or something.
Precisely. Functional beliefs are necessary tools. We need to operate as if the stove is hot, or language works, or gravity exists. These are practical, useful concepts. They're like maps we use to navigate the world.
But the beliefs this source is really focused on are the defining ones.
Yes. Defining beliefs are the ones tied up with who we think we are. Our identity, our worth, our purpose. Beliefs like, I am brave, I deserve happiness, my life's meaning is X. These are the conceptual boxes we kind of live inside. And we start mistaking the box for the whole of reality. We turn the map into our identity.
So doesn't matter if the definition is I'm unworthy or I am worthy. The problem is clinging to any fixed definition of self. It fences us in. And that immediately brings us to the emotional cost, right?
Absolutely. Once you set up that division, that definition, your emotions are going to be tied to it. Beliefs become this filter, this lens.
And what's really interesting here is how the source points out that the biggest highs and the lowest lows can actually spring from the exact same defining belief.
Yeah, take a common one. I must be successful. It's powerful. Drives ambition, focus, feels great when you achieve things. That's its function.
But the shadow side, what happens when things don't go according to the successful plan?
Well, the shadow side kicks in instantly. That same belief suddenly fuels intense stress, fear of not measuring up, maybe deep shame if you face setbacks, because the belief demands constant proof from the outside world.
It makes our inner peace totally dependent on external circumstances matching the belief. Like, if I define myself by, I am loved, it feels good when love is there, sure. But doesn't that definition also create this underlying anxiety? Like, what if they stop loving me? What if I mess up?
You nailed it. The belief isn't just passive, it dictates how you interpret everything. When reality clashes with your definition. Say you believe hard work always pays off, but then you experience a major failure despite your efforts. That gap between your mental rule and actual life. That's where the tension, the frustration, the real suffering comes in. Your peace is tied to the world playing by your internal rule book.
Which brings us to what feels like the most challenging part of this idea, especially for anyone involved in self-help. We get how negative beliefs limit us. But if definition itself is the limit, then we have to look for the trap inside the room. The beliefs we're usually told are good for us.
This is the paradox, isn't it? The positive limiting belief. These are ideas that give us a temporary boost, maybe, but they can also blind us to the complexity, the necessary duality of life, and that ultimately sets us up for more suffering.
Okay, let's walk through some specific examples from the source, really detail the shadow side. Let's start with one used a lot for resilience. I am strong.
Right, so it feels empowering in tough times, helps you push through, but the downside, it can make vulnerability seem unacceptable. Weakness, needing help, crying, these are natural human things. But if your core identity is I am strong, then experiencing those natural states feels like a personal failure. It generates shame, which often makes people suppress those feelings, maybe avoid asking for help, and can even lead to burnout because they can't admit they're struggling.
So strength becomes this rigid identity you have to uphold rather than just a capacity you can access when needed.
Exactly. The definition forces you to deny parts of your experience. Okay, number 2, a common spiritual one. The universe supports me.
This one feels comforting. It builds trust. So where's the limitation hidden here?
It shows up when life gets genuinely difficult, which, let's face it, it does for everyone at some point. If you cling too tightly to the universe always supports me during, say, real loss or illness, it can actually block necessary grieving. It can lead to what's called spiritual bypassing, using the belief to dismiss or minimize real pain instead of processing it. Or you might think, if the universe supports me and this bad thing is happening, I must have done something wrong. It turns into self-blame. The definition just can't hold the reality of suffering sometimes.
That makes sense. It turns a potential comfort into a kind of dogma that can backfire. Okay, example 3. People are good at heart.
A lovely sentiment encourages kindness, openness, but it can also create a blind spot to the fact that people are complex. Sometimes people are cruel or negligent or act out of malice. It happens. If your core belief only allows for goodness, then when you encounter betrayal or real unkindness, it doesn't just hurt, it can shatter your whole worldview. The shock and disillusionment can be much worse because the belief didn't allow for that possibility.
And the last one, a big one, manifestation circles. I create my reality.
Hugely empowering on one level, promotes agency, action, but the immediate shadow side is blame. Total self-blog. If everything that happens is solely down to my thoughts, my vibration, whatever, then if my business fails or relationship ends or I get sick, it must be my fault, completely. It denies the sheer complexity of life chance, external forces, systemic issues, things totally outside individual control. It can make people feel incredibly guilty and responsible for hardships that aren't solely of their making.
Wow. In every case, the positive definition, just like a negative one, forces us to ignore or suppress its opposite. It simplifies the vast spectrum of reality into this narrow black and white picture.
Yeah.
So how do we escape this trap? The source mentions using reflections, right, to kind of dissolve these definitions.
Yeah, the idea isn't to fight the belief or argue it away. It's more about seeing its edges, its limits. So instead of rigidly holding hard times make me stronger, the reflection might be to ask yourself, can I just allow this pain to be painful right now without needing it to teach me something or guarantee a positive outcome later?
That feels profoundly different. It lets you be with the vulnerability just as it is without layering on this requirement that it has to lead to strengths. It just honors the raw experience.
Exactly. Or take kindness always pays off.
Right.
The reflection could be, what would kindness feel like if I offered it with absolutely no expectation of return? No reward, no good karma, nothing. That shifts kindness from being part of a belief system, a transaction, almost into just a spontaneous open act.
Okay, this leads us right to the core question then. If all these defining beliefs are limiting, what does life look like without them? Are we just supposed to be, I don't know, adrift, confused?
Not at all, according to the source. The alternative isn't about finding new beliefs or forcing yourself to get rid of old ones. It's really about seeing beliefs for what they are. Just mental processes, mental maps. And crucially, remembering the map is never the actual territory.
So if belief creates this sense of separation, me versus you, good versus bad, What shifts when you just see the belief as a thought passing through?
Well, that sense of separation starts to loosen its grip. Life itself, prior to our concepts about it, is just open, dynamic, unknowable, really. Living without being run by defining beliefs means engaging with life more directly, responding spontaneously to what's actually happening rather than filtering everything through rigid ideas or expectations.
Let's bring back the work example. If I drop the heavy belief I absolutely must succeed, what actually changes day to day?
Well, maybe the work itself can just be done for its own sake. The intense pressure, the constant fear of failure might ease up because your core identity isn't on the line with every single outcome. Or without the belief, I must always be strong, you can actually admit when you're scared or tired. You can ask for help without feeling shame, which honestly is often the smartest, strongest thing to do. Everything is allowed to be as it is, without needing to constantly check if it fits your internal definition.
But we still need those functional beliefs, right? We still need to rely on the idea that, the traffic light means stop.
Absolutely. That's the paradox we have to hold. We use functional beliefs constantly. The key difference is recognizing their relative truth. We use them as helpful guides, like tools. But we don't weld them to our sense of self, our core identity. When we hold beliefs lightly, use them for navigation, but don't fundamentally believe them as the ultimate truth of who we are, we stop confusing the label with the person. That's where the flexibility and freedom come in.
That really clarifies it. The core limitation isn't negativity, it's definition.
Whether we're telling ourselves, I am not enough, or I am totally enough, both statements draw a boundary around what is actually boundless. Both set us up for suffering when reality inevitably doesn't match the boundary. Both keep us from directly experiencing life as it is fluid, whole, undivided.
So beliefs create this story, this identity, a narrative that makes us think life fits neatly into categories like success, failure, good, bad. And when we loosen our grip on those stories, the mind quiets down a bit, and we can have a more direct sense of just being, beyond all the concepts.
That's the invitation, yes. So as you go about your day, maybe notice the difference between functional and defining beliefs in action. You rely on the functional belief about, say, where you left your keys. That's just practical. But then consider a defining belief like, I am a generous person. You can use that idea to guide an action. Maybe you tip generously. That's fine.
But if your actual identity, your self-worth, hinges on being seen by yourself or others as generous, then not being able to be generous or having it go unnoticed, that creates real suffering, guilt, maybe resentment.
Exactly. So the question to maybe sit with is this particular thought, this concept I'm holding, serving as a useful, flexible map right now? Or has it hardened into a rigid identity, one that demands reality must conform to its rules? Which kind of belief is running the show for you today? That's definitely something to mull over.